We're going to go ahead and start streaming so those on YouTube can watch us live. So we'll get started here in just a couple more minutes. So thanks for standing by, everybody. Well, good evening, everybody. It is 5:30, and just wanted to welcome you to our second Firewise Town Hall meeting. We have a pretty good presentation for you tonight, and we're appreciative of you taking a little bit of time out of your weekend to join us. Obviously, with me here is Luana Dowling from the Placer County Firewise Coordinator's Office. She is the county's coordinator. We have a few more people that are joining us both on YouTube as well as on Zoom. So while we kind of give it a few more minutes, we thought we would start off today, Luana, if that's okay. We'll start with the video that several from the first town hall wanted to see, and I thought that would give us those of you who are already with us some good information. It's only a few minutes, and then that way, as people join us, they will be able to catch everything. So I'm going to go ahead and share the video screen here with you, and hopefully you find it educational, and then we will get started following that. So here we go.
We got a call that there was a typical weekday morning, and we got a call that there was a brush fire that had started. You know, at first we could see this plume of smoke. It seemed like it was quite a ways away.
Wow, find it educational, and then we will get started.
For the first 5 minutes, it went from being a turned it westward. It stopped it from coming into the community of Durango. This was the pivotal neighborhood. This was the fight that won the war. We helped them save it. And that was a big compliment to us to hear them, firemen, professionals, say, you did a good job here. That made us feel really good. But it's not just us, it's the whole range.
There's no guarantees in this line of work, but what they can do is they can stack the deck in their favor. And this community has accepted that. And in this situation, they really saw the effectiveness of how that work it really improves the odds when it comes to major wildfire moving through.
I think any homeowner's responsibility, living in a forest like we do, is help these firemen protect your home. Fire, you don't know if one's going to happen today or tomorrow or when. You know, you can be in denial, but it's, you know, it's a possibility. You have to accept that responsibility. You love the forest, but you're going to have to clear around your home if you want to keep your home. You know, sometimes you make your own luck. And I think that's what we did. We were very fortunate to have the people, our resources here available for us, but it's nice to know that we helped them defend our house.
Protecting your home against the ravages of wildland fire, if you live in a community like this, I mean, that should be as high a priority for you as mowing your lawn.
If you can even do that first 30 feet around your home, then that's going to significantly increase the odds of that structure's survival.
How can you ask somebody to defend your house if you don't want to help them? That's the thing. You got to help them. All they want is a fighting chance.
So I think to come back, drive in my driveway, see that fire truck sitting in my driveway still, and those guys there.
Gotta get emotional once you know the people.
You know, we had been told that our house had burned. People just insisted, 3 people just said, I know it did. I know for a fact. So to drive in here and find those firefighters standing here reading us, I'll just never forget them. Ever. I hope that I get to see them and visit with them again.
Well, hopefully you found that video informative once I was able to get the audio to work. So, you know, we are here kind of playing it by ear via Zoom. Welcome for those of you who just joined us. That video actually can be found on the Firewise website, and we'll, Luana and myself will have that link available for you so you can watch the whole thing later. But we thought that was a good kind of kickoff to this town hall. So for those of you who are just joining us, or those who enjoyed the video in whole, my name is Daniel Berlant. I'm the chair of the Greater Auburn Fire Safe Council. And again, I welcome you to our second of 2 town hall meetings to discuss Firewise community. So again, with me is Luana Dowling. She is the coordinator for Placer County's Firewise program. Her job, and I'll let her get a little bit more into detail, but really is to help all of us and help neighborhoods, homeowner associations learn about Firewise and go through the process to become a designated Firewise community. We're also joined today by Dave Spencer. He is the fire chief of the city of Auburn. And let me just do a quick check to see if any of our other fire chiefs are joining us. Doesn't look so, but we've been working very closely with within the Greater Auburn Area Fire Safe Council. First off, we are an appointed group, 4 of us from the city of Auburn and 4 of us from representatives of Placer County. So I really quick want to introduce who are your Auburn Area Fire Safe Council members. Danielle Hardesty and Frank Udavali, they both represent Placer County District 3. So while we have the name Auburn in our Fire Safe Council title, we represent Penryn and Newcastle as well. And so Danielle and Frank represent District 3. Representing District 5 include Kathy Baxter of the Auburn area and Carrie Askew Bailey, who lives up in the Bowman area. So we also extend north into Bowman. And then the city of Auburn has 4 representatives, Rob Kisloff, who I believe is joining us today, Richard Hadley, Bob Snyder, and myself. So we are a citizen group of volunteers. We meet once a month at the city hall typically, but right now we are meeting via online with COVID-19. In fact, this town hall meeting we've been planning for several months, and due to COVID-19 and public gathering restrictions, we had to come up with a new format. So bear with us as we kind of go through this online version. But the Fire Safe Council really is a dedicated group of residents, and we work closely with our fire officials and the residents that we serve. Again, the greater Auburn area, the city of Auburn, Bowman, Newcastle, and Penryn. And our job is to help advocate for fire prevention, to really weigh in and make sure that between the city, the county, and the surrounding communities, that we're all prepared for fire season. So as we get started here, I want to give an opportunity first for our fire chief, Dave Spencer with the city of Auburn, just to give some opening remarks. And Dave, Chief, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Chair of the Fire Safe Council. Welcome everybody to our town hall meeting. We appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to join us, talk about some important issues that involve all of us within our community. As you know, this area, particularly the city of Auburn, is a community that's on the National Fire Plan as a community at risk. So we take the threat very seriously. I'm grateful for Luana to be here today to help us kind of navigate through this conversation and provide valuable information for you as homeowners and community groups to help us help you be prepared. I think that's the issue. That's the message we're trying to get across, is that everything you do that can reduce the risk of wildfire or structure to structure ignition will help us on a go forward as we move through the climate environment that we're in. As you know, we're in a new season and the projected outcome for this season is not super favorable for us. And so we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later on. But I just want to, again, say thank you for taking the time out of your weekend to be here with us today. And so with that, I'll either turn it back to Dan. Okay, very good. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And the Chief will be available here for questions as well. As we get started, before we dive in here and I turn it over to Luana to begin really the meat of the conversation, a couple items. One is, for those of you who are on Zoom, you are welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation through the chat feature. That's probably the easiest way, or you can raise your hand. Again, if you're on Zoom, the chat feature down at the bottom is the easiest way, or you can raise your hand and we can see if we can connect you to audio. But if you are watching right now on YouTube, because we are streaming this on the City of Auburn's YouTube page, I will go back here to this screen here, and you can see I've placed my email address right here for you. So if you're watching at home, feel free to send me an email, and I will be checking those emails throughout the presentation. We'll also be giving you Luana's contact information as well throughout the presentation and at the end here, so that if you have further questions related to Firewise, you'll be able to contact her directly. We've got her phone number and email there as well. So again, if you want to send me an email with a question for either the Chief or Luana, you can email me dberlant@auburn.ca.gov, or again, those of you who are on Zoom, please feel free to use the chat feature. So with that, Luana, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you, explain to us what is Firewise.
Thank you, Mayor Berlant. I appreciate that. And so do you have, I sent a Becoming Firewise template to you, Daniel. Do you have that?
I will pull it up for you momentarily here.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. Just a little bit about Firewise. So forming a Firewise community takes getting your neighbors together, and just the meat of it is getting your neighbors together and having all your neighbors work together as a community when it comes to your wildfire risks. So you form a committee, you do a risk assessment, we do an action plan, an education outreach, a work day, work hours, and your application. Daniel will put that up, I think, here shortly, and it'll explain a little bit more of that to you.
Luana, the Word document or the PDF document?
Probably let's do the PDF.
Okay, here you go.
There we are. So becoming a nationally recognized Firewise community. So I'm going to give you a few little stats real quick on how we are doing in Placer County compared to California and the nation. So right now, nationwide, there are 1,500 Firewise communities in the nation. California has 330. Placer County has 50 Firewise communities, and I'm currently working with 112. We've had 5 additional Firewise communities come on since our last town hall. So that's pretty exciting. Some of the other things, so in 2019, our Firewise communities in Placer County invested with volunteer hours and some funding that they retrofitted homes or they redid landscape, $3.5 million in 2019. Total hours that they actually put in around their homes, 78,000 hours. And they removed 78,000 cubic yards of materials from their homes. So that's pretty exciting, and it's pretty significant when it comes to what our communities are doing in Placer County. So I don't know, Daniel, can you scroll up on that? Thank you. So here's our risk assessment. So steps to achieving a national recognition, we need a risk assessment. I help with that. I will be there for you to help you through that process and to actually come help do the assessment of your community. We look at the community as a whole, not individual homes. Firewise communities can be anywhere from 8 connecting homes to 2,500 connecting homes. A lot of our Firewise communities are HOAs, road associations, but they can also be just cul-de-sacs and neighbors wanting to get together to protect their homes. We form a committee, and that's just so there's someone with accountability when it comes to reporting the hours to Firewise, putting together your education days, and forming your action plan and your educational outreach. Can you scroll up a little bit more, please, Daniel? Thank you. So once your risk assessment is completed, we create an action plan. The action plan is things that you need to do within your community. Those action plans are 3-year plans. So, so once we do your risk assessment, and we look at, in the risk assessment, we look at home hardening. We look at the roofs in the homes, on the homes in your community. We look at the siding. We look at the vegetation, landscaping, ingress, egress, defensible space. And we look at those things on a percentage basis. And we look at, do you have good defensible space on a percentage basis, or do you not have good defensible space within the whole community? The next things we do after those, once we put your action plan together and address those risks that we identify in your risk assessment, we do an educational outreach. Those educational outreach days can be putting information out throughout your community, having one of your fire chief, myself, someone who is connected with landscaping, those types of things, come and do educational talks within your community. You can have potlucks, you can have just get-togethers, barbecues, to get your community together and talk about those risks and educate folks on defensible space and the things they can do within their community. And then you actually work within the community for your risk reduction, and your risk reduction investment, it's very minimal. It is 1 hour per year per dwelling unit. So 1 hour per year per home is what the investment is that Firewise requires. Every Firewise community does very much more than that. But I know all of you probably do at least 1 hour. I'm hoping several hours around your homes, removing leaves from gutters, cleaning your yard, weed eating, getting rid of brush, getting rid of any dead vegetation around your homes. That's where your risk investment come in. Once we do that and we have those things accomplished, then we actually submit your application. Once the application is submitted, it goes to the state CAL FIRE, They review your application. If it passes their review, then it goes to NFPA in Colorado, which is National Fire Protection Agency. And they review, and if it passes their review, then you become a recognized Firewise community. So with that said, do we want to look at a little bit about defensible space, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of great resources related to defensible space. One of those being readyforwildfire.org. I will bring us over to that website, and then Luana, if you want to walk through it, that's fine as well.
Absolutely.
Let me share that screen here. Bear with me for one moment. So here is again, the website, readyforwildfire.org, and it is a good location for a lot of great resources related to preparing and preventing wildfires. Luana, I'll open up here to the defensible space section, and then if you want to walk and explain people through it, that would work.
There we are. So your defensible space zones around your home. Zone 1, as you can see in the slide, is 30 feet around your home. Within that 30 feet defensible space area, you want to make sure that your landscaping and your vegetation is kept maintained. We want to make sure that there's no dead leaves and whatnot, say, under your decks up next to your home. We want to make sure that there's no flammable vegetation, so junipers and those types of things that are very flammable. We don't want those next to the home. We want them at least 5 feet away, hopefully further. And junipers are kind of my pet peeve because I've seen several of them out there in the when I've been doing risk assessments of communities, and they're so highly flammable. The main reason they're so flammable is because there's dead vegetation within them, and it's really hard to keep that dead vegetation out, and leaves get caught down in and underneath them, and it's really hard to keep them clean. So you want to make sure that your vegetation and your landscaping around your home are things that you can keep clean, and you can keep you can rake underneath them, and you can clean that area. You also want to make sure that your home itself is well maintained, and that if you have, let's say, a wooden fence that leads up to your home, which is a wick for a wildland fire, is well maintained. We recommend that if you have a wooden fence that attaches to your home, that you remove the 5 foot and put in a metal gate, put in metal that attaches to your home, so that wick doesn't actually attach to your home. There's several things like that that you can look at. There's more information on that. I believe that we'll be looking at some of that possibly in the video.
You know, Luana, a lot of people think when we talk about 100 feet of defensible space, that's clearing right down to the bare minimum dirt. And as again, I understand this is a graphic representation, but it's green and there are trees even within that first zone. You know, in your experience, you know, this is more of what a good defensible space home looks like, correct? Not, again, just bare mineral soil all the way around your home.
Oh, absolutely. And the other, we don't want bare mineral soil around the homes. A maintained yard, trees that are limbed up. We like them limbed up 6 to 8 feet off the ground. That way you don't have those, what we consider ladder fuels that go from, you know, if you've got dry grass around, it goes from the dry grass to the brush to, there we are, to the tops of your trees. So we want to make sure that you limb up at least, it says a minimum of 6 feet. We don't want to go any more than a third of the tree. We don't, so, you know, if you have a smaller tree, you don't want to limit up 6 feet, obviously. And keeping brush out from underneath your tree branches and your tree limbs, that's a huge thing. Also, you can have little, let's say, nature nooks that are small, 2 or 3 trees together. Keep them limbed up underneath. Keep all the dead away from them. You can even have bushes, but spread them apart. Break up that continuity so that if a wildland fire comes through, it just doesn't go brush to brush to brush to brush to your home or into the treetops. So you want to just be well maintained, and like I said, break up that continuity. But you can have a beautiful yard with trees and beautiful bushes and those types of things, and still be Firewise and still be fire safe.
You know, and on this website, and as we're looking right here, you know, there's somewhat of a formula to determining how much distance to put in between your trees or your brush. So you can see the formula for if you're on kind of a flat or mild slope, that you take the height of the bush, multiply it by 2, and that's the space in between your bushes. For your trees, if it's on flat slope, at least 10 feet in between the branches. And then that formula increases as the slope increases. So here you see if you're on a 20 to 40% moderate slope, you take that same formula, the height of the bush, multiply it by 4, that's your distance. The distance for your trees, 20 feet between the branches. And then here's a pretty extreme steep slope, 6 times the height of the bushes you want to put in between, and 30 feet in the tree. So some good, math to go behind, some science to go behind determining how do you, spread out your plants. Luana, I'll let you keep going.
Okay, so with most of that said, I think that we could probably move into question and answers, I think, Daniel, at this
Great.
point.
So again, if you have any questions, use the chat feature in front of you, and we can answer them here live. You can raise your hand, those of you on Zoom, or again, you can send me an email as well. Let me just if we have any here. But again, Luana, when you go to when people are interested in becoming a Firewise community, what's kind of the first step? Is it, do they call you? Do they have kind of have a neighborhood watch meeting? What is it that you normally see when somebody is at home right now and they're interested? What's the very first step?
Very first step, contact me, and I will get you information, or go to firewise.org. There's steps within the firewise.org, but contact me via email usually is the easiest for me. And I can get information to you, and I can start you down the right path. And then I encourage also, if folks want to call me once they get that information and have questions, please call me. I'm very open to having those conversations. Once we do that, get some folks together and we could sit down and have a meeting. I can explain it to everyone, the process we go through. And once we do that, then we can set up your risk assessment.
Again, if you have any questions here for Luana about Firewise, just use your chat feature or your questions and answers. No questions as of yet, and that's fine too. Luana, we can just keep kind of going back and forth. But when you do have the meetings, with the neighborhoods, what are some of the common questions that some of the residents ask you?
Some of the common questions are, what are the benefits to becoming a Firewise community? And there's great benefits. I ask the Firewise communities a lot what they feel is their biggest benefit. The first one they come back with is they have a sense of community. They know their neighbors now. And once you have that community, that sense of community, things can really start flowing. And when it comes to wildfire risk, folks start talking. They start helping neighbors. And so that's one of the biggest benefits is everybody knows everybody. They're willing to get out and do neighborhood cleanups or barbecues or education days. And that really helps to solidify a community.
Yeah, I know you and I've attended a number of those, whether they have, a potluck. It's really a good opportunity beyond just the reducing your fire threat and coming together for fire, but it's really just a sense of community. And a lot of times when I've attended those dinners or potlucks or barbecues back before coronavirus, it was the first time some of the neighbors had met each other. So there is that. My understanding though is there are several insurance companies that actually provide a financial benefit if you are in a designated Firewise community. Can you explain to us how it impacts your insurance when you have this designation?
So there are two insurance companies that actually publicly state that they will give reduced rates. The California Fair Plan, if you're in a Firewise community, you'll get a 10% discount if you have to go to that last resort. And then USAA also gives a 5% discount for being in a Firewise community. There are other insurance companies that don't publicly state that they'll give discounts, but there are some. I've had Firewise community members come back to me and say that their insurance had dropped or they had gotten a rebate for being in a Firewise community. I've also had folks tell me that they've talked to their insurance agent and told them that they're becoming a Firewise community prior to having one of those barbecues or having one of those events where I come speak to folks, and that their insurance company has said, please get back to us as soon as you become a Firewise community, and we'll be able to help you, whether it be a reduction in rate or actually be able to write them as a home within a Firewise community.
Yeah, and with everything that's going on around right now with insurance companies dropping so many people in California because of the threat of fire, being able to get even a 5 to 10% reduction, does go a long ways.
Yes, it does. And the insurance companies tend to look at the Firewise communities. They're not just, once you're in a Firewise community, they don't just look at your home. They look at the community. So if you have several homes within an area that have defensible space and that have hardened their homes, that community, that individual home has a greater chance of surviving a wildfire.
Yeah, but on that note, Kirsten asked a question that's a good one. What if not all your neighbors want to participate? So, you had mentioned the minimum is 8, but if you're in kind of a neighborhood and you have a holdout, what are the options there?
So, as a cliche, I say this: if you build it, they will come. And it really is true. I've had folks come to me. I've had folks with large communities come to me, and there's only 2 people in the community that want to start these Firewise communities. And they've told me, our neighbors down the way I don't believe that they're going to be helpful. I don't believe that they're going to join. I've had those neighbors down the way within a year's time be their biggest advocate. It just takes getting it started. Once folks get educated, once they find out that their neighbors are all working together, it's kind of a little bit of peer pressure, I think. They don't want to be left out. They want to join, and they join willingly. It's a great program, and I just see communities thrive because of it.
Yeah, Bill asked a really good question, Luana. Is there any grant money available for homeowners to assist with the cost of clearing? Even if you're not necessarily low income, but you don't have the money to do the clearing now, but the clearing needs to happen. Are there programs that are out there to help residents with that?
Right now, I'm not aware of anything other than you could get a hold of the Placer Resource Conservation District. I do know that there are some, I don't know if there's any CFIP dollars out there right now through CAL FIRE, but I know that there's some other through national, this no, it's not NFPA, Resource Conservation District, and what's the other one that's in their office? My mind just went blank.
NRCS.
NRCS, there we are, that's it. So there may be some stuff through NRCS. So if you get a hold of the Resource Conservation District, Placer Resource Conservation District, they can direct you if there are grants or funding available through them. Other than that, most of our funding is put towards the large fuel breaks that we're doing that protects large areas, and they're strategically placed, and so we're putting our funding into that. The chipper program right now, due to the fact that the inmates are not able to get out, our chipper program is kind of on hold a little bit. And there is a BEN program that through the Placer Resource Conservation District that will help folks within communities can get a bin and fill a bin. Those are the only things that are available that I know of at the moment.
Luana, if I'm not mistaken, NFPA has had small, I think $500 grants or grants that they provided to some of our other Firewise communities. Are those made available every year, or does the funding just kind of ebb and flow?
Actually, those are made available every year, and they're it's for Wildfire Preparedness Day, and it's through through NFPA. Firewise communities are usually the ones that apply for those, and yes, it is a $500 competitive grant that some of our communities have been able to acquire.
We'll give the NFPA website or the Firewise website, and again, there's a good link there. But I do remember one of our neighborhoods got $500 last year to do some of the brush clearance in their neighborhood, so that may be a good one. Bill had another question. How comfortable should they be or he be with local tree trimming companies when he's asked them to create defensible space on their behalf? His question is, do most or all of them know what it means, or are they just trying to get money out of him for his property? So what's been your experience with some of the local tree trimming service companies? Because I know we have a number of them here that do really quality work, but what are your thoughts on what are the safeguards to hiring a good, brush clearance and weed clearance, company?
Definitely look for references. That would be the first thing. Make sure that they're insured, make sure that they're reliable. Most of them around are good, but to safeguard yourself, make sure that you look for references and make sure that they understand what defensible space is, and they're not going to go in and clear cut your property.
Yeah, very true. But again, there are, I know, a number of companies located here in Auburn that do some very great work. So again, do your research is the bottom line. Ann and Ed asked a question. They back up to Baltimore Ravine in the South Auburn area. Their property has 2 open spaces on either side. And then the Union Pacific and the United Auburn Indian own the land to the back. The defensible space, they said, is pretty non-existent. So Luana, this is a home that backs up to not another home. It's open space owned by the railroad or vacant land. How are these 2 agencies involved in the Auburn area Firewise community? And maybe this is a question as well for Chief Spencer, Chief, actually, this is probably a good one for you. Can you, because I know your department and you specifically do spend time, because that has been a concern in the past. Can you talk to us a little bit about first what the United Auburn Indian Tribe has done on the land that they own, and then second, the efforts that you have done related to the Union Pacific?
Yeah, so happy to answer the question. I'll be careful to speak on behalf of the United Auburn Indian community. They are very concerned about their perception within the community and want to make sure that everybody understands that they're doing their part. We've developed a pretty strong relationship over the last couple of years since I've been here. I've had the opportunity to take a tour of their property previous last year and then again this year. And they continue to do great work using the same prescription that we use for the Auburn Shaded Fuel Break on their property. And so this last tour that I took, I'll tell you that it looks fantastic. It is a park-like setting where, just as you described with the defensible space, the undergrowth, grasses, and brush have been cleared. The trees have been limbed. And so it is really a nice environment and really has decreased the fire threat significantly for that area. And I couldn't be happier. You are correct with regard to the Baltimore Ravine. There's many parcels and areas that are not owned, and then we have the railroad that is got a several easement areas, and that has been a long-standing issue, as I understand it, long before my arrival a couple of years ago. We've been successful in reaching out to them and being able to spin them up to do some work throughout the area. When I have the conversation with them, you have to understand that the folks that are assigned to this particular area continue to tell me that they've got about 4,000 miles of track that they're trying to handle all the easement property within it. Not to say that that's an excuse, it just is a representation of their workload. And so we've been trying to be patient with them and trying to make sure that they continue to move forward. As long as they're moving forward and making a good earnest effort to continue to clear areas, then we're happy with that. We'll continue that process because quite frankly, that hasn't occurred prior. We have a couple of homeowners associations in our community that had some real specific issues, and we were able to be successful in getting them into that area and taking care of that. And so I continue to look for those areas and share with their leadership about our concerns specific to our area. And so again, it's about partnership, it's about good communication, and just helping them understand what the concern is for us as a community at risk. And so I think that covers all your questions on that particular issue.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Dave. So, you know, if residents have concern, let's use the city particular, since you're on and we don't have representatives, unfortunately, today from CAL FIRE or the county fire or the other fire districts. But, you know, if a resident does have a vacant parcel next to them, what are their options as far as helping to get that cleared? What's the process to get the fire department involved?
Yeah, so we certainly have codes and ordinances that are applicable to the city for all the different parcels and properties and those minimum standards that apply. When you find yourself in that scenario where you're either not getting some compliance or aren't able to contact the property owner, you can go to our website. On the left-hand column of our website, we'll have an area that says report a concern. And in that, as you fill that out, you'll identify that it's a fire department problem, and our staff will certainly contact you, make sure that we have all the specifics, and then we'll start that complaint process. What I will tell you is that that's best used in the scenario that we just described, where you're having trouble finding the neighbor, talking to whoever the property owner is, whatever the case may be. But what I will circle back to is kind of what Luana talked about the community and that connectiveness. Traditionally, over the years, many people have used complaint processes to just tattle on their neighbor and then lay in a litany of complaints and then not have any conversation with the adjoining property owner. And I just want to reaffirm that as we continue this effort, we're in a new day and a new time. This last decade has been significant for us for wildfires. I want to reaffirm that the city of Auburn is a community at risk. And so the only way to change the culture is to continue to have that conversation and continue to bring that to the forefront of our conversations regularly. And so when you develop a tight-knit community, it's not to say that we're being aggressive with each other or you know, trying to force somebody to do something. It's about having that simple conversation to say, hey, I'm doing my part. If you do your part and you reduce your risk on your property and I reduce my risk on my property, the chances of structure ignition from one structure to another dramatically decreases. And that helps both parties so that we can eliminate losses that occurred such as these last couple of years. And as you know, it's been a tremendous impact on many, many cities across the state for the last several years. And so I just want to reaffirm that it is a multi-pronged approach, both from the fire department from an enforcement effort, but both our community as well is continuing to have that good conversation and just share what each other is doing. And I think we find that as we change a culture, it makes a significant difference.
Yeah, no, very much appreciate that. Again, if you have questions for Chief Spencer or Luana or myself, use your chat feature and let us know. Chief, while we've got you here, do you want to talk a little bit, and I can put it on the screen, but a little bit about some of the efforts the city has taken to reduce wildfire threat, and particularly some of the multi-agency work happening in the Bureau of Reclamation land?
Sure, absolutely. So as you know, we are a ridgetop community. And so we sit on the ridge of the American River Canyon. That property is actually owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. They're a federal agency. And interestingly enough, they're a water management agency. They don't do land management. And several years ago, that land was deeded as project land to be the Auburn Dam. And so with all intentions during that time, it was expected that that entire area would be full of water. Well, that never materialized for various reasons. So now we find ourselves in a place where that area has a tremendous amount of fuel loading, and there's no real jurisdictional authority except for the BOR to be able to do that land management. At one time, it was involved with the Bureau of Land Management, which has those capabilities, but it was moved over into the project process through legislation, and that's what makes it complicated for us. So all of that is background to say that we have been able to engage the Bureau of Reclamation and come up with a memorandum of understanding in which we can go onto their property and work to clear some of that fuel and reduce the threat to our community adjacent to those property owners that live right there on the canyon's edge. Fortunately, this back in 2019, we did receive a large grant for about $1.9 million. It was awarded to the Resource Conservation District that Luana was referencing, and was a part of that process of being able to bring that forward as the Fire Alliance agency that represents all of the communities here in Placer County. And so we're grateful for the work that they did. So to date, there's been approximately 110 acres that have been treated on the Auburn Shaded Fuel Break. I just met last week with the Resource Conservation District to talk about phase 2, and they're going to be starting that process in the short term and continue to work. So when you look at this map, you'll note that at the bottom, it indicates about 150 acres that have been treated. And then as you look into the yellow and orange areas, those are the next phases that will move to basically the northeast of us, past Highway 49, and we're moving toward the Foothill Bridge. And then there's some additional work that will need to be completed to the south. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is tie that shaded fuel break from the Tahoe Basin all the way down into the Granite Bay area and the dam there. And that will allow us to have one contiguous shaded fuel break that protects all of the communities that are adjacent to the canyon, and will make a tremendous difference for us on a go forward. So that's the work that we've been doing with Resource Conservation District. And I'll also mention that we've been able to secure some additional grant funding over the last year or so to be able to do additional work adjacent to the shaded fuel break that has allowed us to extend it or make it wider, so it gives us a much bigger area of protection. And so for that, that's the work that we've been doing. We'll continue to move forward with that effort and continue to look for opportunities to make our community safe.
Great, thanks, Dave. And on this map, just for those of you who are looking down towards the bottom, again, this is a little hard to see when we're streaming on a computer. You can visit the city's website, auburn.ca.gov, and follow through with the progress that the Fire Department and the Resource Conservation District and the Bureau of Reclamation are making. Down at the bottom, though, if you can see my cursor, that's Maidu Drive in between those two kind of greenish colors. And then obviously the work that has already been completed. You can see the Placer High School to just kind of give you a frame of reference, and then obviously the Roby Point area that sticks out here. Obviously, Roby Point has been completed up and around the point itself. And then, David, looks like it's, as you were saying, it's that northern portion as the city moves up. And again, for frame of reference, between the orange and the red as the Forest Hill Bridge and Forest Hill Road and the confluence onto the right-hand side. So what's the plan for the Resource Conservation District, Dave, if you know, for starting some of these additional colored areas that we see listed as A, B, C, D through H?
Yeah, so they took a pause after phase one, that work that was completed. They needed to do some bidding for contractors. Again, they want to try to make sure that they're getting the best price for the work that's being done to maximize the effort. So they're in that process right now. They've also been able to, the Resource Conservation District themselves, unrelated to the grant, has hired a forester. What that will do for us now is the forester will then be able to make recommendations to the BOR about some additional fuel treatment, which would include things like mastication and grazing and those kinds of things that will allow us to get much more work done and more efficiently and not as cost prohibitive. And so that's the phase that they're in right now, is getting those contractors on board and getting them started. My conversation with them is that this last week was to say, hey, listen, keep in mind that we're moving into, you know, our summer months, right? And our increased fire danger days, such as this weekend. And so I did indicate that when that happens, I'll notify them that, hey, on those days, we need to not be doing that work because it really increases the potential for having a fire during those times. But I'll tell you that last year, there was approximately 13 days in our local area that we had that impact. And so it's a relatively small impact when we talk about stopping that work for that brief period of time. And the risk benefit doesn't allow us to really move forward with that. But they'll continue to work into this phase two. They'll yet again take a pause after they get that completed, just like they did with this phase, and then move into phase three at the south end.
Great, thank you for that, Chief. Again, the map that I was showing that may be hard to watch on here, you can get from the city's website, auburn.ca.gov. Go to the fire department section of the website, and then the wildland strategic portion of that. Luan, another question here for you. When we were talking about the minimum number of homes to get the designation, and it's 8, if I'm not mistaken, a question here is, do the minimum 8 required need to be next to each other, directly next to each other? What are the rules as far as do they have to be contiguous to each other?
Yes, they have to be contiguous to each other. So, and the reason for that, and the reason for the 8 is that if you have 8 homes and they're contiguous, that will create a Firewise fire safe area, a larger fire safe area. So, but yes, they have to be contiguous to each other.
Gotcha. And while we were talking too, I went to the Firewise website, and I did see that this year they did award 150 communities grant dollars to help on Wildfire Preparedness Day do clearance around communities. And actually, we had recipients both in Auburn, Forest Hill, and Applegate. So we did have some area residents in their Firewise communities that were able to take advantage of that. So it's important if you are looking for that funding. They do it, Luana, usually in May, correct? Tied to their National Wildfire Preparedness Day. Is that correct?
Correct. They're awarded just prior to that. I believe the grant process comes out in March. I try to make sure as soon as that comes out that I get it to the fire safe councils and to the Firewise communities that I have contact with. So.
Great. Bill has another, my helper here. Bill asked another question. If you wanted to do clearing on his own, but wanted some more on the ground practical guidance, other than just the graphic that says 30 feet clear space, 6-inch branch clearance, etc. Is there a resource for that, even from the fire department coming out to look at the land, but not necessarily to be worried to be fined, which is a really, an excellent point. Chief, talk to us a little bit about some of the assessments that your firefighters do in the city. And we don't have representation today from CAL FIRE or the other fire districts, but I know in talking to them earlier this week, they do a very similar educational type of inspection. So Dave, Chief, do you mind giving us a little bit of an overview of what that looks like and how does a resident go about making contact?
Yeah, well, and again, I want to just reaffirm that although we have an enforcement capability, we find that that is probably the least effective to get our community as safe as possible. We always find that education is always the best route to go. So for us, within the city limits, we have what's known as a structure ignition assessment program, where you can simply sign up and we'll a time that works for you as an individual, and we'll send out our career companies to come out and go through all of the recommendations that they would have for your entire home, as well as the landscape area. And that's free of charge. And as you alluded, many of the other districts and agencies have similar programs. And so the point of that is to be able to say, these are the types of things that you can do to continue to reduce your risk. Some of them are very low cost or no cost, and some of them are significant. When we talk about home hardening, you know, obviously the concept in home hardening is we want your home to stand alone without any help from us and be able to survive as a wildfire passes through the area. Well, that requires both landscape mitigation as well as home hardening. And so when we combine those two things or two efforts together, that's where you get your most maximum benefit. And so again, I just want to reaffirm that both Auburn City Fire as well as our surrounding jurisdictions are happy to come out and talk to our homeowners and just share with them best practices and recommendations that we would have if we were there to be able to do that work as well. So.
Great, thank you very much. That was a good question. By the way, sounds like Bill lives in a Firewise community. So Bill, I'm great. You know, we didn't mention, Luana, there are a handful of communities that are already Firewise. In fact, here I will put on the screen, you may not realize it, but you may already live within a Firewise community. So let me share my screen here and see if I can move on past this page. But right there's a whole list within the greater Auburn area. Some of these are in the city of Auburn, some of these are in North Auburn, Christian Valley, Ophir, but you can see there's almost a dozen different Firewise communities that are already designated, or Luana, looks like a number of them are pending. So if somebody lives in one of these communities and wants to, you know, an update, what's that process of getting involved with the group that's sponsoring the Firewise community work?
So most folks, if they're in a Firewise community, they know it. If Firewise community is working properly, they know they're in a Firewise community, and contact the folks that are out there spreading the information and spreading that educational process. You can contact myself if you think you're in a Firewise community and don't have that contact information. You can contact me via email and I'll make sure that you get that contact information.
Great, thank you, Luana. Chief, another quick follow-up question on the inspections, specifically for those in the city of Auburn. If they want the fire department to come out, do you, is there a form? Is there a way for them to call, or do you just kind of hit random neighborhoods? And I say that because I know that in the county area, CAL FIRE, they are strategically targeting certain neighborhoods each year. And so the chief was talking to us earlier this week and said, listen, we really very rarely take cold calls to come and do that assessment. But in the city, what's the process?
Yeah, so unlike the county, because our footprint within the community is much smaller, we're able to pivot and address some individual needs. So when you go to the Auburn City website and you go to the fire department page, under the wildfire preparedness, there is on the left-hand side homeowners resources. And in under that homeowners resources is the wildfire structure assessment. And it is simply a link that you would click on, and we try to make it as friendly and as easy to use for our community, where a calendar comes up and they pick a time, and then we adjust our schedule to be able to meet our community's needs. Now, granted, if there's emergency activity that takes our entire staff, then for those types of reasons, we wouldn't be able to participate. But for the most part, we rarely have any conflict, and we're able to provide that service. And so we look forward to being able to have that conversation. Great.
Thank you for that, Chief. I want to go back and allow everybody to have an opportunity to look at Luana's contact information. So obviously our goal today is to, answer questions about what Firewise designation means, try to really, answer some of those questions, but also motivate you or get you, excited about how simple it really can be to become a designated Firewise community. So on your screen, hopefully now you see Luana's contact information, Dowling Luana@gmail.com. She's given us her office number and her cell phone number. So I'll leave this up here for a few minutes here for you to note down. And then some of the great resources that we've been talking about throughout this evening, websites you can go to. One is firewise.org. A lot of the template information that Luana was talking about related to the steps it takes to become a Firewise community, the templates on filling out the assessment and other things, and even information about some of the funding that's available through the National Fire Protection Administration that oversees the Firewise program, also on that firewise.org. And then readyforwildfire.org is the website we were looking at the very beginning, where you can see what does defensible space mean? What does home hardening mean? The chief was talking a lot about the materials that your home is built out of, and how that structure material plays into account as well during a wildfire. And so there's a lot of good resources. Luana, you and I were talking earlier today, the low-cost retrofit list that's up there as well. That's another good resource that's listed on the Ready for Wildfire. Luana, do you want to briefly explain what the low-cost retrofit list is?
Sure. So it's a list that's on the readyforwildfire.org website that kind of gives you an idea of some of the things you can do around your home, with your home itself for home hardening, that are simple things. Cleaning gutters, making sure that trees and things aren't touching your home, clean underneath decks. There's a lot of things that you can do that are easy, simple, and low cost. A
lot of people think that when we think about home hardening, if you're in an existing home, especially a home that's 10, 20 years old, that it's too costly, or you need to have, that it's not worth it. And that's not really the case, right? There's things like when you go to replace your windows, replace them with double pane, looking at the screens and the eaves and putting up a wire mesh to keep those embers out. So all that is on that low cost retrofit list as well. So as we wrap up here, Luana, thank you again for taking the time to talk to us about Firewise. Leave us with some parting comments from you about the importance of Firewise, if you don't mind.
So Firewise communities are beneficial. They're beneficial when it comes to wildland fires. There's a lot of success stories out there. And being a community, looking at those risks from your own community. Even these communities are, if you do have to evacuate, communities are working on plans to have block captains to help folks when they evacuate and make sure who the elderly are and who those folks that need help are. So the Firewise communities are just not only having your homes Firewise, it's being a community that's Firewise. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to put out there is Firewise communities are beneficial in many, many, many ways, but I think being a community is probably one of the biggest ones. And I want to say thank you to you also, Daniel, for hosting this and for helping with this and being the mayor and the chair of the Fire Safe Council and all the things that you do. Thank you very much. And you too, Spencer, both of you.
Luana, thank you very much. Chief Spencer, any closing comments from you for the good of the order?
Sure. Thank you again for hosting this. Again, I just want to echo Luana's comments that, the concept of of moving together as a group really potentiates our efforts, and any reduction that we can create in community risk reduction makes a significant difference. And if each one of us just does a little part on the whole, it will make a significant difference. So I just want to encourage you and support you that that's what we're here for, is to continue to help us move forward and keep our community safe. So thanks for taking the time out of your weekend to be here and listen to this important information. And I'm sure we'll interface with you at some point in the community.
Great. Thank you, Chief. And again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We hope that the websites that we provided, the information was useful. You are welcome to join us at the Fire Safe Council meetings. We meet every month, the third Friday of every month at 9 a.m. You can learn more on the Auburn's website. That's where we post all of our agendas. I will leave you all though with the contact information for Luana, and I hope that you all have a fire safe day. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Have a nice evening, everybody.